Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Classically Chloe Show. I am your host, Chloe Castillo, and my guest today is a music director, composer, vocalist, and educator in New York City. He actually leads an art program at National Nonprofit Fair for All, and he co-chairs the Braver Angels New York City Alliance. He is the founding chairman of the New York Young Republicans Club Art Caucus, and he is what I would call a very based maestro. His name is Brent Morden. Brent, welcome to the show.
Chloe, thanks for having me. I look forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So let's just dive right into your story before we start talking about our opinions on music. So you are clearly a very accomplished musician yourself, and you've been to music school. You went through all of that as a classical musician. So tell me your story. I know you've told me it's very interesting when you told me before. Most people, go to college who are raised conservative and, have this liberal conversion somewhere along the way, become radical leftists and, go down that route, especially in music school. Liberal arts schools are very, very left leaning. You, on the other hand, had more liberal beliefs to begin with, went to music school and kind of said, oh my gosh, what is happening here? So tell us about that. Tell us your story.
I would love to. I'm happy to start at the very beginning. So your listeners might be familiar with a town called New York City. That's my hometown. I grew up in Queens, New York, the same home borough as our president, right? And I grew up in a household that instilled certain values in me. My parents were and grandparents were Eastern European Jewish immigrants who came to America seeking freedom and opportunity. They were very entrepreneurial and instilled in me that love for freedom of expression and seeing people as individuals. I fell in love with music very early on. I remember listening to Chopin and Brahms and Tchaikovsky and just being enamored by their artistry, the beauty in the orchestrations and the melodies and harmonies. And I from a very early age, just wanted to write music, create beautiful things in this world, right? And I'm setting up, like a symphony, I'm setting up some themes that will come back later on. These are some motifs. So I grew up in Queens. I went to a very competitive high school, very education oriented as a young child who wanted to just do well and really live a vision, a grand vision for life. And I did my undergrad at a small school your listeners might also be familiar with or heard of called Columbia University. Yes. I did my undergrad at Columbia from 2015 through 2019. And if you're familiar with the story of college campuses in the mid-2010s, this was at the height of college campus craziness. At that time, I was just a very music-loving, education-focused young man who wanted to do great things. I hadn't really paid attention to politics, but by virtue of growing up in New York City, I would say I was a liberal by default because I wasn't exposed to any other viewpoints. Growing up, going to school in Manhattan, I went to a high school in the Upper East Side, Manhattan, going to Columbia. All of the viewpoints I was exposed to were Democrat, progressive, party line. Anybody who voted for Trump in 2016, which was around my freshman year of college, was supposedly a bigot, a terrible person. And I just went along with these ideas because I didn't know any better. And I didn't want to stir the pot. I just wanted to focus on my studies, do well, right? Columbia opened up my eyes. I mean, this was the late 2010s. There were student protests on campus. Students were cultivating this culture against free speech and creative expression, against civil discourse, which went contrary to the values I grew up with of seeing things from other people's perspective, valuing freedom and discourse and what America offers all of us, right? And I especially saw this in the arts. I'm sure you're familiar with this, but from my perspective as a composer and a music director training my bachelor's, I started seeing identity politics and DEI as the North Star within commissions and grants and calls for scores and programming decisions. And I sensed that something was wrong. There's something not right about this, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I was still very dedicated to my studies, still not really politically engaged, but I decided to open up my mind and my heart to perspectives that could help me make sense of what I was seeing, this craziness, these protests on campus, this ideological capture within the arts. So I started listening to, at the time, what were other points of view, people on the right, People like Ben Shapiro. I discovered Jordan Peterson. I fell through the podcast rabbit hole in the late 2010s and realized there are other perspectives that are worthy, are valuable, are reasoned and well thought out, and in many cases help me make sense of the world in alignment with the core values I grew up with in Queens. Uh, and so that's a very long story short of how going to Columbia. Usually people go to Ivy Leagues and they get radicalized, right? That's what you were saying. People go to Ivy Leagues, they learn these progressive mores, they read Marx, and I read Marx and I'm like, this is not the right way to go about things. And it opened my eyes to wake up towards the right. So that brings us, that was the start of a journey that brings us to the present day.
That's a fantastic story, and I think it's very inspiring for, I guess, parents who might be sending off their kids off to school to think that there is some actually freedom of thought left. Not much, I wouldn't say, but people like you who actually fill those spaces, and by that I don't mean sending their kids off to school to because they're going to react like you did, but rather people who are in the arts and in those communities who actually I guess, fought and said, you know what, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, even if the left calls me insane. This doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with this ideology, but I'm going to still stay in this arena of the classics and of education, and I'm going to actually be a light in all of that. So, bless you for doing that. That's not simple. So, my next question for you, I guess, is just how are you received by your colleagues when you kind of had this revelation?
Well, I had never really been public about my politics until recently. It was a slow transformation throughout my college years of, I would say, kind of default New York City liberal to classic liberal to conservative, or libertarian to conservative. And I was also always guided by my belief and allegiance to universal principles of that transcend politics, in my opinion, especially embodied within the arts. I'm talking about beauty and freedom and creativity and the potential for music and the arts to highlight our humanity. That's really what
Right.
motivated me to write music and pursue music. It was a connection to God in a way. It was a connection to the divine that
Right.
transcends politics. I had started being a little bit more open about my being conservative curious, I would say, towards senior year of college. And I found friend groups at Columbia that welcomed me because I knew if I told my colleagues like, hey, I kind of think Trump's doing an okay job. This was the late 2010s while he was in his first term. They would not want to work with me. My professionalism is really my North Star as a musician. So I never received backlash because I wasn't very vocal about my politics until recently. And recently I've had really the great privilege and I've been grateful enough to develop a community of like-minded artists and creative professionals and people who are interested in building a better alternative, like you, Chloe, right? We're part of this community. So I'm well received within here. And my colleagues on the left who, I have much love in my heart for them. I respect them as musicians, but I know that if I were to respond or engage with my colleagues on the left who are nowadays, this is January 2025, saying, oh, anybody who voted for Trump or supported this person in the White House, unfriend me. I never want to work with you, which I'm seeing, by the way, all the time. If they knew about me, they would never want to work with me. And, it brings me conflict, Chloe. I mean, you are in a position where you're very open about your politics. I'm still kind of growing into that space. And I think I'm we have to strike a balance as conservative and Republican people in the arts about what battles do we pick, right? I guess this conversation is a step for me and just be saying, you know what, I'm here. I just want to be able to exist as a Republican musician and not be ostracized for my beliefs in New York City in show business. And I want to just be treated on the basis of my talent and my professionalism and people who want to work with me because of who I am as a composite individual, not cast me aside because I voted for Trump. I don't know if that answered your question. I like to weave a little bit, just like our friend Trump does. I like to do the weave. So feel free to guide us in a direction as you please.
I think you did a fantastic job with the weave there, but, I appreciate that too. I like having these kind of conversations with people who have, been in these kind of experiences like yourself. And, it's very tough, and I appreciate you coming on the show actually, because like you said, I am very outspoken and, out there with my beliefs, which is relatively new as in the past few years for myself. I mean, I am young, but I grew up, much like you in the conservative, not conservative, the very left leaning art world, performing for the politicians of the left and for performing for these people who really I knew hated my beliefs even as a kid, just having, just loving God, for example, and thinking that, some of the basic things I even had the slightest idea about was when it came to leftism would be completely rejected if I ever voiced those kind of opinions. And so I can definitely relate to what you're talking about there. And I think that it really is, it takes a lot to actually say, you know what, I'm just going to say this is who I am, this is what I believe, and I want to be treated just as a musician, as a person who wants to bring beauty to the world, who doesn't want to bring, you know who doesn't want to just bow down to whatever it takes to be one of them and to be accepted. And I mean, very good for you for having these kind of conversations and saying, you know what, I'm just going to say who I am, and I'm going to take one step at a time to actually get there and build a community too, not just for yourself, but build a community for others, musicians who are in the same position as you, who say, you know what, I just want to be able to be a musician and have my opinions, not have to hide in the corner. And so tell me a little bit more about, what have you done with these communities? Because you told me of some on the phone before, these communities that you've built, that you've become a crucial part of, and really shaping something, especially in New York itself, where these musicians can find community, where they can find more like-minded people who are artists and who have these same kind of beliefs and values.
Absolutely, Chloe. To answer your question, let's go back to the year 2020. A quite a year for all of us and for the world. And amidst all the turmoil in America and both COVID and the post George Floyd racial reckoning, and all these arts organizations are putting out statements of solidarity
Mm.
and this virtue signaling. You remember this. A lot of your listeners will remember this. I remember being at home and thinking, who are the actual reasonable, normal arts professionals and creative professionals, not just conservative or Republican, but even people in the middle who are just normal people who are not down with all of this, who want to actually come together and meet each other and find some community in reviving and reclaiming core guiding principles of what makes the arts great anyway, right? Craft, beauty, excellence, freedom,
Mm-hmm.
all this ideological BS, right? And that led me to an organization called FAIR, now FAIR for All, where I established the arts department, and I still lead that. FAIR is a nonpartisan organization. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit. And our goal is really to get together a professional network of artists who want to reclaim these universal guiding principles of fairness, understanding, and humanity in the arts across politics. We have people involved who are conservative, like myself. We have people who are more classic liberal, moderates, interested in the universal guiding principles that make the arts beautiful and expressive of our humanity. And we started putting on events, first virtual, then live. I established a grant, because a big problem in the arts institutions, our grants are very ideologically captured, especially at the highest levels. So we have a grant. I'm sure you saw that as well. And so that was kind of my nonpartisan effort of building a community of arts professionals around the US. Locally here in New York City, I similarly found myself in 2021 or 22, like, where can I actually meet like-minded, conservative, interesting, talented artists of high integrity? And I realized it was up to me to actually take the initiative to create that space for people here in New York City. I had the great pleasure of joining a few years ago the New York Young Republican Club, which is the largest and oldest and most esteemed young Republican club in the country. I organized our last gala, which had 1,200 people in the room. Trump was our keynote speaker a couple of years ago. And I saw an opportunity to create a space and a community for conservatives in the arts, because similar to what you're doing and what we're doing here, I think we can agree that for too long, the GOP, the Republican Party, has done a good job of complaining about and highlighting the problems of the left's takeover of arts institutions and culture without really doing much to combat it and doing much about it. And I saw that too, and I'm like, listen, let's do something. Let's actually bring people together to form professional connections, to create new works, because if we want to change culture, we have to create culture, and that doesn't happen in a vacuum. So I established the Arts Caucus in 2023, I believe, and it's been one of the fastest growing, most successful caucuses within the club. We had a few very successful launch parties with live music. We had the privilege of establishing connections with Emilio Pons, hosting events at his brownstone. He is the teacher of our friend Chris Macchio, America's tenor, who just performed at the inauguration. And what I've discovered is conservative artists and musicians, especially in New York City, we have a way of finding each other. There's this kind of gravity that pulls us to each other because we're guided by higher principles in a way. I've been so grateful just to meet an incredible network of talented musicians and writers, dancers, actors, theater people in New York City who I organize these events. We come together, we party, we meet each other, we form these connections, we put on recitals, and build the infrastructure, build a better alternative to the failing institutions that are captured by the left. The gentleman I mentioned earlier, who I would love to introduce you to, Emilio Pons, he set up a vocal arts academy that's hosted at his townhouse as a competitor to Juilliard and other classic mainstream institutions, because a lot of these places, Juilliard's music department and such, are losing their focus. They're being guided by allegiance to false idols, if you will, of DEI and identity politics over the North Star of beauty and excellence and the connection to the transcendent that attracts all of us to music and the arts. And that, I think, makes the arts right again, like your project, right? Making the arts great again is reclaiming and restoring these universal, transcendent North Star principles. So anyway, New York Young Republican Club Arts Caucus, Fair in the Arts, and Braver Angels. I started and launched the Braver Angels Alliance here in New York City, which is a cross-partisan effort, because I believe, and I'll wrap up here, I know I'm talking a little bit, I like to tell stories, as you can tell. Politics involves coalition building, right? And if we want to succeed in our project of restoring balance to the arts and uplifting a better vision for what music and arts can be, we have to understand that we have to build our coalition. And that includes reaching out across the aisle and welcoming people who are ready to accept a better alternative and see that our values of freedom and excellence and merit and creativity and beauty are better than the failing alternatives on the left that have captured so many institutions. So that's what led me here and motivated me to start forming these communities and organize events. And it's been really such a pleasure and a blessing and a privilege. We have an event coming up in a few weeks, recitals. Anyway, a lot of good stuff is going on here in New York.
Brent, that was so eloquently said. And, one of the main takeaways from that is to change culture, you really have to create culture. We can't just complain. Like you said, our side of the aisle here has been they've done such a fantastic job at complaining and haven't really done much to when it comes to the creation part of things, especially when it comes to art and culture. So that is such a huge discussion topic there. I want to get to more of it. We have a quick ad break. We're going to run a couple ads here, and let's come back and finish up the show talking about this, because I really want to get more of your opinions on how we can start to create. I know you said a little bit about this, but let's just do a quick ad break, come back with some more from Brent about creating culture.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, It's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
Now's the time to go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your MyPillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
mypillow.com. Just tonight, I stood before the tower. Nothing seemed the way it used to be. In the glass, I saw a strange reflection. Was that lonely field fellow really me? Though it was more than days, my friends, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day.
Welcome back to the show, Brent. Thank you so much for being on here with me. We got about 5 minutes left here on the clock. Let's talk some more about what you were just saying. I think it's incredibly important we touch on this. You really made a lot of great points there talking about how we have to create to make any change in our culture we want to see. You know, it's what we've seen in the left's culture. Well, I said less culture. What we see in American culture is a complete infiltration by our dear friends, the left. And so I think that it's so crucial for people like you and myself and, you know, so many others who are artists and who see this as an issue and who see the importance of not just letting the left get away with not just, you know, here's one thing I want to talk about a little bit. The left's power in Washington ebbs and flows. It comes and goes. We have Republicans, we have Democrats. It kind of, you know, there's a somewhat of a balance, although the uniparty is a whole other topic we can talk about for hours, I'm sure. Even with that said, though, I feel like the left never really loses their grip on culture. They always hold a firm grip, have a very firm grasp on our culture and on then, of course, you know, the minds and hearts of millions of Americans. And I think that's something that as people on the conservative right, we're really missing the opportunity to actually bring something beautiful into the forefront of our culture and actually, you know, have an art and have a culture that honors God, that isn't self-centered, that isn't looking inwards always, but actually brings something forward that elevates our humanity, you might say, to a higher being such as God and you know, and really making something beautiful in our culture again. So let's talk about that some more. What do you think needs to happen beyond people like me and you who have seen the issue? What can happen on the conservative side of things? Because the left funds their organizations. They pour everything they've got into really creating, and we kind of have to do it like in ones and twos on our own. So what do you suggest for the conservative right? What can they do to really push these kind of movements forward to, I guess, make music great again, or just to bring a better, more vibrant and, you know, productive culture into our society again?
That's perhaps the most important question. It's going to be a multi-pronged effort. I'll pick on one thing you mentioned, which is the money and the funding portion. The left has been so good at creating patronage networks and of being on the board of organizations that deliver millions of dollars in grant funding. A big part of, and this is not going to happen overnight, but a big part of people on the right is people of means have to start understanding the value of the art and culture in changing people's minds and hearts and supporting opportunities and initiatives that allow for the creation of new works of art of high quality. They can't be bad, high quality by conservative individuals who are uplifting better principles. I mean, really, there have to be better role models who are courageous voices on the right in the arts who say, listen, I'm a Republican and I'm an undeniable talent. And it is I can demonstrate to the world and to my fellow Americans that you can be MAGA and also be a phenomenal singer or a phenomenal actor or phenomenal voice, a thought leader in culture. We have some people like that. And I think we're seeing already a lot of wins within the conservative counterculture. People like Tony Hinchcliffe is making supporting Trump cool and fun because stand-up comedy has always been a little bit irreverent and embracing freedom of speech, which is worthy, right? So it's going to take that. It's going to take supporting the creation of new works, which we need money for that. And it's just going to be, it's going to take all of us as individuals who may be on the right or even in the middle, but disgruntled with this idiocy on the left to just be undeniable talents, be the best artist possible, create amazing works of writing and literature and music that show the world that our voices are here, right? And we're not gonna bow down. We're not gonna toe the line. We're undeniable talents, and you have to listen to us. Be so good that they cannot ignore us, right? That's how we win. Be so good that people are like, listen, this is better. I'm gonna go here because in the spirit of America, we are attracted to better alternatives. That's what capitalism is about. That's why my family came to America many decades ago and raised me because this was a better alternative. And I'm thrilled. I'm sure we're thrilled. We have a better alternative now in the White House, who I'm optimistic can articulate a national strategy to support the arts and culture, which Trump is already doing. And we have a lot of runway and a lot of places to go from here. But I'm very hopeful. We're just starting.
So now that I think we really have the support of the people in office as well, I think that we can make leaps and bounds in this area instead of being constantly taken down by those in power and those who control the institutions. We really, I think now more than ever, have the opportunity to really make something of what we've been talking about here with actually bringing something beautiful and worthwhile and of a very high quality back into the forefront of our culture. So Brent, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for giving your input on these topics. You're clearly a very very accomplished musician yourself. You know what good music is. You know what it's going to take to actually bring good music back to the forefront of our culture and actually make it something that's supported in America again, instead of the garbage that the left has been so successfully throwing down all of our throats. So thank you so much for coming on. Please tell the audience where they can find you.
Absolutely, Chloe. Thanks for having me. My website is brentmorden.com. Please reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at extraordinary. Would love to hear from you. Book me if you'd like, and check out some of my work. We're building a network together, so I want to hear from you.
Absolutely, Brent. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to have you.
Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify to stay up to date on the latest episodes of The Classically Chloe Show. Please also follow me at classically_Chloe on Instagram and Classically Chloe on all other platforms. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. God bless.